expecting someone else? Ass! Hey dudes and girls, back at it with another beginner's video. Now I've done a lot of these videos in the past, but they're mainly focusing on a single exercise like squats or push-ups or pull-ups. In this case, we wanted to focus on a single muscle group. And that muscle group is gonna be the gluteal muscles, or more commonly known as the ass. And that's why I have my girlfriend here to help with some of the exercises because she has a goal of strengthening her glutes. I think you'll see that in a lot of women. They just want a nice butt. You know, yoga pants come pretty popular, and so you want to look damn good while wearing them. But they're not only built to look good, they're built to function properly. And some of those functions are gonna be standing, walking, running or sprinting, and climbing up on things. I mean, you name it, you're using your gluteal muscles for almost everything. So we're gonna explain some of the functions behind them, but also some of the exercises are gonna pinpoint these muscles to help them look better and also strengthen them. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Yeah. Ooh, the slow flex. She kept everyone waiting. So the first portion of the gluteal muscles that we want to focus on is the gluteus maximus, the biggest muscle in the body, but it's also the biggest muscle located in your butt. It's what makes its shape and really the power behind it. Because usually when you're just walking, the gluteus maximus isn't really activated that much, but as soon as you want power, as soon as you want to sprint or step up on something or really kind of have that power and strength, that's when it really activates. But the problem is it's not, you know, some people have a hard time engaging it and really getting connected to it. So before we go into kind of the major movements that are gonna help strengthen it, we want to go into some movements that will kind of get you that mind-muscle connection and help you engage and get connected to your butt. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, so Michaela's gonna do the first one, and it's gonna be a plank position with a hip extension because the gluteus maximus main function is gonna be the hip extension. So basically taking your hip from here to here. That's why you see a lot of people do this kind of movement to help target their glutes. So Michaela's gonna get down into a plank position. Plank, everyone's pretty familiar with this, but the one thing that you're gonna notice is she's gonna extend her hip upwards. There you go. And immediately the gluteus maximus is gonna have to contract, and obviously you can see it engage as well. And now it's a very hard position to hold. Now this is isometric contraction, meaning you have to hold that position, and that's what really makes you connected to the muscle there because you're just kind of feeling it contract throughout that whole kind of time period that you're doing it. Another one is very simple, is basically, and I'll do this one so you can spare you the look of it, because these are kind of goofy. The next one is you can basically just lay on the floor here, and you're pretty much pushing your hips into the floor and squeezing your glutes as hard as you can. Now, obviously you won't be able to see my glutes as much as Michaela's, or you probably don't want to, and that's fine. But you're really getting that nice connection to your glutes to make sure you're contracting them properly. So that's kind of the two little warm-up exercises that you can implement in your training to kind of get connected to your glutes. But the three major exercises we want to cover for the gluteus maximus is going to be the first one, of course, squats. Yeah. So as you can see, we're at the squat rack and it is set up, and Michaela is gonna be performing some squats. But as we said earlier, the gluteus maximus is excellent at hip extension here. And so when your hips are in a flex position or semi-flex position, to able to extend the hips upwards, like let's say, if you're seated in a chair and standing up, the glutes are gonna be awesome for that. But they're also gonna be worked in like an eccentric contraction or negative when you're sitting down as well to help control that movement. Once you're in that position, glutes fire up, help extend the hip. So squats, big compound movement, you go really heavy with it. And like we were saying before, the glutes, of course, are there for power. So squats are definitely an exercise that will help develop that strength and power. Flexing at the hips, sitting back like you're sitting on a chair, and then extending the hips upward. So boom, glutes are activating. Now of course, in a compound movement like this, when you sit down, you're also flexing at the knee, and when you stand up, you're also extending at the knee too. So the quads are going to help, as well as the hamstrings too, because they play a role in hip extension as well. But the primary mover is gonna be the glutes. I mean, since it is the biggest muscle, it is going to be playing a role in making sure you're getting that weight up into the top position. So another movement of the gluteus maximus, one that plays a little bit of a secondary role in its action, is going to be the external rotation or the lateral rotation. Kind of that movement is going to be another movement of the gluteus maximus. You'll kind of see this when we'll talk about squats, to externally rotate your legs to really kind of corkscrew them into the floor there. And that's really gonna help fire up those, the glutes as well. When you kind of turn your legs out or try to turn them out, you'll immediately feel the gluteus maximus fire up and try to, kind of pull your feet into that lateral rotation there. So that's another important role of what it does, especially when you're doing squats, to really kind of help stabilize your hip joint and get a little bit more power in your glutes too. So yeah, so it's not only hip extension, there's a little bit of obviously lateral rotation in there, which you can always include in your exercise too to help strengthen the glutes. Sometimes it's hard to feel the glutes in a big movement like this. Maybe your quads take over, maybe you feel a little bit more in your hamstrings. And that's why we kind of use some of the warm-up exercise in the beginning to help kind of target the glutes and get connected with it. But if you still have a problem feeling the glutes in a movement like squats, well, we have a couple other exercises that you can implement in to help target the glutes that much better. Exercise number 2 is going to be step-ups. Now, very simple exercise. I mean, it's pretty much something you use all the time, but it is another example of you utilizing that hip extension. And again, it's gonna be a compound movement, so you're also utilizing the knee joint as well. So some of the other muscles are gonna be involved, but this is an excellent tool to kind of feel a little bit more in the glutes because you're also using a unilateral movement as well. So you're focusing on one side and then moving on to the other. And the height of the step will dictate how much work your glutes and your legs, I guess, in general, have to work as well. So we're taking a little bit of a shorter step, as you can see, just kind of get a good take on the movement here. So she's gonna place her leg up, and now you can immediately see right here, so the hip is flexed, and then she's extending the hip joint there, of course, as well as the knee joint too. So in this position, the glute's gonna have to fire up, extend the hip, nice squeeze, and back down. But we're also activating a little bit of the gluteus medius and gluteus minimus, which we're gonna be covering after the gluteus maximus here in a second. They play a huge role in help balancing the hips, the hip to lateral hip tilt there. But for the most part, the gluteus maximus is fired up to make sure you can step upright into that top position there. So boom. Exercise number 2, awesome exercise. Step ups, definitely a favorite. So that is the last compound movement. The next one is gonna be more of an isolation movement that's gonna really focus on the gluteus maximus, and that's gonna be right now. Exercise number 3, and it's going to be glute bridges, hip extensions. They kind of go by different names, but we're gonna be starting with some glute bridges, and that's really mainly just focusing on the hip extensions to help focus more just on the gluteus maximus and less on the quads and hamstrings and the flexion and extension of the knee joint. So a lot of people, you'll see this very popular exercise to help target the glutes, and it's going to be pretty much done in a couple different ways. We're gonna show 2, which is gonna be extending the hips from the floor. But the thing with that is you really only focus on the top portion of that lift, fully extending the hips and squeezing, and then letting it down until your back is flat on the floor. Now with elevated glute bridges, you're going to be elevating your body on a bench, and therefore you're gonna be flexing more in the hip joint and then being able to extend to the top position. So the range of motion is increased quite a bit in that exercise. So that's why it's a little bit more popular in a lot of ways. So as you can see, Michaela is ready, she's fired up, her glutes are popping, and that's what it's all about. So she can do an elevated hip extension. She's gonna be supporting her upper back on the bench. Gotta fix the hair first. Don't want to get that caught. That's never good. So upper back is supported, and she's going to, this is the full extension. She's going to be dipping her hips down, flexing in the hip joint down, and then extend and squeeze. You really want to get that nice squeeze in top position. That's really going to help engage the glutes and of course the full flexion, so it has to come all the way up to the top position. Now, as you can see, her upper body is following kind of the hip flexion there. She's not kind of trying to keep her upper body flat and only bending in her lumbar and thoracic spine there. She's allowing her spine to stay straight while she dips down and then continues that to the top position. It's very important because if you kind of just dip your hips down, you get kind of like too much extension in your back, get a little kink in there. In the long run, it could cause injuries, especially if you're doing heavy ones. A lot of people will put a barbell like you do and extend from there. But now that we've covered the gluteus maximus, the biggest muscle, we should take care of some of the smaller muscles too, because they play a very important role in a lot of other movements. And yeah, let's do it. Now it's time to talk about a little bit of the lesser known gluteal muscles, which is the gluteus minimus and medius. Now they are located superiorly to the gluteus maximus, which that is just the term they use in an anatomical sense of being above. So they are located above the gluteus maximus, and they work in a different way. They don't work in hip extension, they work in hip abduction. So there's adduction and abduction. Adduction is easy to remember because ADD, like you're adding to the body. So it's like, say you're taking your arm, bringing it close to the center line axis, and the abduction is taken away from the center line, just like so. So with the leg, the gluteus medius and minimus, abduction, and then of course your adductor muscles are pulling your leg back into position. So this muscle is very important not only for posture, but especially for walking. Because what happens is when you walk, the natural gait is you're coming up onto one leg, next leg, and so on and so forth. So now, immediately when you're walking and you bring that leg up, the opposite side of your gluteal muscles, the gluteus minimus and medius, is going to have to engage to pull your hip into position to straighten it out. So that way your hip doesn't dip down and all of a sudden you're sliding your leg on the floor there. So it is always going to help with your walk, your posture, things of that nature. So you do need them fairly strong to make sure it pulls your hips in the proper directions. So like we did with the gluteus maximus, to kind of help get you connected to that muscle, there is one exercise I would like to do to really kind of get you in tune with that one, and we're going to show you that right now. So the exercise is going to be a side plank to hip abduction, and this is going to be a hold as well, much like we were doing the plank with the hip extension. All of a sudden now we're doing a side plank with the hip abduction. Do you want me to take this one over, babe?
Yes. Yeah,
I'll do this one. It's pretty difficult. And she just worked legs yesterday, so she's a little bit sore already. So now with the side plank, you get that side plank position, just like so. Nice straight body. And once you're in this position, you're gonna abduct your leg outward, away from center line, and you're immediately gonna feel that medius and minimus fire up like crazy. It's gonna be burned like hell. And you're gonna hold as long as you can. Oh! Pull it back down into position, and you can rep those out, maybe a few, 2-3 sets, just so you can kind of really feel those engage. And then of course you switch sides, since this is a unilateral exercise. You can go to this position, raise up, and just hold, and damn, you're gonna feel it immediately fire up. It's gonna start burning. Try not to rotate out too much, externally rotate. You wanna keep that foot pointed straight the whole time. Of course, if your leg externally rotates, what's that do? That's right, it fires up the gluteus maximus, because that's one of the other movements. So, abduction, boom. So that is an awesome warm-up to help wake up the gluteus medius and minimus. And you can tell Michaela ran off, because I think her ass is about done. But she's using her gluteus maximus to run. See, she's still training it. She doesn't even know it. That's how awesome it is.
Is it over yet?
Not quite yet. We still have 3 exercises to help target and strengthen the gluteus medius and minimus. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Oh, well. I guess it's just me. Views are gonna go down quite a bit. Okay, well, I guess I'm doing it on my own. So, and she's back. Okay, good, because we're gonna do the first exercise, and that's gonna be the band walks. Probably seen a lot of these in any kind of gluteal tutorials, and because they're so damn good. And so Michaela is going to be demonstrating, of course, because she just makes this looks too damn good. And fairly simple, as you can see. She just has a band. She's gonna be pulling around both legs, just right above the knee there. And what she's gonna be doing is getting in a partially squatted position, so slightly flexing at the hip, and then keeping her toes pointed forward and just making slow walks laterally, abducting the hip, boom here, and then boom the next side, just like so. Now, what did we say before? The glute med and minimus are an amazing way to help balance the hip. So she is stepping off of one leg and then onto the other. So that is gonna take some stability there and fire those up, but also abducting her legs outward. And there you go. That's helping target the gluteus medius and minimus as well. Well, there you go. We're done with this one. On to the second exercise, which is going to be Oh, hey, we started without you. You're a little late, but that's okay, because as you can see, it's fairly simple setup as we did before. We're still utilizing the band here, wrapped in the same place we did on the previous exercise, and now we are focusing solely on the abduction of the hip. So taking this leg away from center line, and as you can see, Michaela's just holding on to something to help stabilize herself. She is supporting herself on one leg, and she's abducting out, really targeting the glute med and minimus there. And what this is good too, again, as we were saying, she's gonna have to force her body to keep her hips stable and in position. Now, one of the mistakes people can make in a motion like this is they think the farther they go, the more it's gonna work. So they'll do this and really bring their leg out, but all of a sudden now this hip is moving to compensate to try to get that farther range of motion. You don't need to do that. You want to keep your hips stable, in position, just raise that out, really get that activation, and then back in. So it's a somewhat shorter range of motion. Some people have a little bit further range of motions than others just because of the, how their femur is built. Basically, the greater trochanter can be a little smaller or bigger. But I wouldn't worry about that. What you really want to worry about is just making sure your hips are stable and you're abducting out, feeling that contraction, the glute med mid, and then bring it back center line and then go again there. There you go. Very simple exercise, but damn, is it effective.
Yes, very effective and also very difficult. It looks easy like the last exercise, but even with a very light band, you feel it, so.
And you could even do it without a band. I mean, we're doing it with a little bit of resistance, but you can just get used to it, especially if you're just starting out, to do it with just your leg and slowly work into getting comfortable and strengthening those smaller muscles, because a lot of times they can be neglected, they can be weak, and of course, like we were saying before, if they're weak, your posture can suffer from it, or your gait, your walk. That's why this can be very important. And of course, as you gain strength, you can implement a band like Michaela's doing. Yes. But that is exercise number 2. It's time for the third one. You ready? Yes. The last exercise is going to be the single leg squats. Now, I'm gonna be taking this one. We're gonna be switching places a little bit where I perform the exercise and Michaela is going to be coaching me. So we're gonna see how this works. So coach, what do I do?
Just get on one leg and then go down.
And go down?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh God, that didn't work so good. Okay, I think I'll probably take over the coaching from now on. So the single leg squat is a compound movement. This is a little bit more difficult than the previous ones we were doing, for more of an isolation, using one joint. This is gonna be using multiple joints. As you know, a squat is using your knees, a little bit in your ankles and your hips as well. But with the single leg squat, it's not necessarily a pistol squat. You kind of bring your leg back, comfortable position, and also hold yourself to support yourself as well, because this can be a little difficult, and you can work into a range of motion you're comfortable with. So you don't have to go like all the way down and then all the way back up, like so. You can kind of work in a smaller range of motion at first, but what's happening is when you get in that single leg squat, as we were talking about before, the gluteus medius and minimus do an excellent job at kind of stabilizing the pelvis, the hip there. So that way when you're here, it doesn't, if you're here and your hip dips down, this side dips down because this side needs to contract to pull your hips in a straight line there, then you know your gluteus medius and minimus are a bit weak. So you really got to work on keeping those hips straight, squat down, and press right back up. And immediately you'll be able to tell they're fired up because you feel them kind of burning there. With your quad a little bit too, because of course you're utilizing some flexion and extension in your knee joint. So awesome exercise. A compound movement to help target the gluteus medius and minimus muscles. And there you go. There's the 3 exercises that are gonna help develop the lesser well-known gluteal muscles that still need some love. I mean, gluteus maximus, damn, gets all the attention. Give a little attention to the little guys too, because they help out a lot. And speaking of little love, I need a little love. My assistant is gone. Michaela has disappeared, so maybe one day she'll come back. Oh, there she is. Aw, that's so sweet. I'm glad you can join us for the end of the episode because you did an awesome job, and always appreciate you joining in on these episodes that we do, the beginner episodes, because it's kind of the fundamental things that you need to know, the function, the form, kind of simple exercises that can help target certain muscle groups, and of course the gluteal muscles are a very important muscle group, as we've learned in today's episode. Are you excited for future episodes?
I am. I love it. It's so much fun.
I agree. I'm very excited too. What other recommendations do you guys have for beginner muscle groups? We'd love to do it. And well, until next time, yeah, stay buff.